everyone. Thank you for dialing into this closing general session of Illuminate 2020. I hope you've had a good conference experience. I know that all the Sumos have had a ton of fun putting together this virtual event this year. Of course, we wish we were here together in person, but gotta adapt and evolve, right? So, and this way, we hope that a lot of you have probably found it easier to attend actually this year and make use of all the content today. So 2020 clearly is a year that we will not forget soon. We have a global pandemic in full swing, and slowly we are getting used to a new normal. Nonetheless, we are here today. To me, this underlines just how inevitable and how strong a force digital transformation really is. And frankly, we see our original thesis that software as a service is a better way to do software confirmed. Not necessarily confirmed in a way that I wanted to see it confirmed, but nonetheless, I feel blessed for all of us that we are in this business and that we can continue to do our job and support our lifestyles and families. A lot of people right now are very much less fortunate this year. And in the end, though, we are here because of all of you, our customers, and we are truly thankful for your continued support. So in light of the hardships we've seen, personally across our families and at the national stage, and the possibly dramatic impact on your businesses and verticals, and in light of what is playing itself out in the streets in many countries, I just want to say one thing: be excellent to each other, please. 2020 also marks the 10-year anniversary of Sumo Logic. And yes, we sometimes tell different versions of the story, but it is true that Sumo is ultimately named after my dog. You can see him on the slides here in 2010 when we got started, and a few days ago, 10 years later, and he's still going strong, maybe a bit more gray, but not as much more as me. He's still a very good boy. We've been fortunate that the story of the last 10 years for us has been a story of continuous growth. Of course, we had a hunch in 2010 that we would be dealing with a lot of data, but it still frankly blows my mind today when I see these current numbers. We are touching almost an exabyte of data every day on your behalf, and you folks are analyzing tens of billions of events every single second. Holy crap, seriously? Aren't you happy in the end that you didn't have to build out and manage this infrastructure for yourselves? So how did we get there? In the famous words of championship national football coach Sepp Herberger, and who is in my mind hands down the greatest of the dead German philosophers, nach dem Spiel ist immer vor dem Spiel. We feel that we're only getting started, but we continue to hold dear a number of foundational principles that we have adopted all the way back when starting the company. So let me walk you through some of them. Number one, before Sumo, we did enterprise software. We built the software and then we threw it over the wall, and we ended up sticking you, the customers, with the hard part of installing it and running it and upgrading it and scaling it. And since we know that the general law is that anything that processes data will always have to process more data tomorrow, we ran into many scalability issues. We found ourselves in an endless loop of trying to work with the deployment idiosyncrasies of the largest customer of the day. And then, once we were done with that, what we learned from that customer wasn't actually as easily transferable to the next one as we would have hoped. It was very inefficient and also very frustrating. Instead, at Sumo, we started with the thought that we should, from the beginning, build to scale to all customers. This led us to software as a service in the first place, but almost more importantly, to multi-tenancy. Some of you process more data than others, and yet in our system, no single customer is even close to using a majority of resources. And, despite many other people saying that their products are, cloud, ask them. Multi-tenancy is a big advantage, and, a lot of our competition continues to run single-tenant offerings. This is why we are here with you when you launch new products, games, or have an enormously important horse race one day, God save the Britishers, or just happen to have to broadcast the largest single-day sporting event of the year. Number two, we don't want to do anything more than once. Nothing's bespoke. Our hands are not meant to do stuff, right? Our hands are only meant to write code, and that code that automates everything. Other than that, maybe manicure, right? And of course, automating everything is something that doesn't sound as radical today as it did 10 years ago, but it is still the right thing to do. Give me death or give me an API, right? Ultimately, that leads us into the territory of software-defined software. This is kind of the way that I look at it. Code always scales better than people. I continue to find this fascinating, but we won't have time to dive much deeper into this today. So on to number 3, and the final one, no freaking silos. One team. We are all working on the same product. Internally at Sumo, we call that the product development team. Everybody has, of course, certain strengths, and we leverage them in any possible way that we can. But fundamentally, every person in product development, independent of their title, is expected to be able to act in an agile fashion, to be able to run the service, to be responsible and carry a pager, and to integrate security best practices into their daily work. We don't see how we could do it any other way. At Sumo, if you develop the product, you run the service that delivers the product, and there's no exceptions. And you know what? Over the years, we have realized that none of the above is any different from what you guys are doing, right? And so in the end, we really are you. And I think this is a big strength. We are our customers. That's how we look at it internally. We have a perfect dog fooding setup. Sumo runs on Sumo. And coffee, obviously, like everything else. We have the same pain points, and we make the same observations that you have from working hard to deliver your reliable services. And I strongly believe that this has been setting us up for success from day one. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about how we see the world on a high level. I have already mentioned previously digital transformation as a powerful force that is reshaping business. And this is almost starting to become tautological, right? So, here we go. This is the digital transformation tautology. Of course, digital businesses rely on the applications on top of which they run. This is true for Sumo, and it is obviously true for all of you. Yes, I know computers have been around forever and they have been used for business purposes for a long time, but only over the last decade or so, roughly speaking, has this transformation really turned into a giant wave. And so no matter how your business people look at IT, nobody can hide from the truth. Modern businesses are driven by IT and systems and applications. And here's another tautology. Customer experience is everything. The competition is always on your heels. You don't have a monopoly. All the transformative forces that enable you to run a great digital business are available to your competitors as well. So how do you keep customers coming back? You need to provide a great customer experience. There are lots of things that go into a great customer experience, but underneath it all are systems and applications, and those buggers better work properly, right? So you need to be intelligent. You need to be intelligent about your systems and applications continuously. This is a real-time world. Competition doesn't sleep. Continuous intelligence, therefore, is an obvious need for your business. And because of all of this, your stuff needs to be reliable and it needs to be secure. If customers can't access your site, they are going to have a bad time. If you leak their data, they are going to have a bad time. Guess what? They will not come back. The experience is shit. Competition is laughing all the way to the bank. In the end, you are the one that's going to have a really bad time, a much worse time, in fact. Therefore, availability, performance, and security are directly connected to business success. This is the final tautology for today. Some research I found, I think it's from 2016, says that in many cases, an hour of downtime costs on the order of $100,000. Often it can be more than $300,000. That's a couple of headcounts. You could hire a lot more people to automate stuff, right, with those hands for that kind of cash. So here's a very simple view of how we look at what we are doing. We have been spending 10 years building out the market-leading machine data platform as a service. And we've already seen previously some of the scale at which this runs. We have an integrated platform that collects, ingests, and processes data, and we call it the Continuous Intelligence Platform. This platform enables you to analyze your machine data, and it enables us to provide what we call global intelligence solutions, all in one form factor delivered as a service. On top of it, we provide targeted solutions so you can keep your systems and applications, and therefore your businesses, reliable and secure. So let's drill in a level. In our view, our observability solution enables you to keep your stuff available and performant and therefore reliable. And we've heard about the observability solution, all day, and we will actually hear some more about it, as part of this session. Our Cloud SIEM solution helps you keep your business and your customers secure by providing a platform for security operations and security analytics. Underneath, we have a planetary scale at this point analytical database that understands all types of machine data, along with the all-important metadata. The analytical database is the front end of our machine data lake. There's a lot of very sophisticated product design, technology, and operational knowledge behind all of this, but the picture really is that clean. Usually we make it look a little bit more fun when we try it internally. But something I want to emphasize one more time, this one platform with its solutions orientation can bring together all the roles in IT. This goes back to these sort of silos that we've talked about and the fact that they are not good. We see many customers and within their organizations what we see is that many users are almost seamlessly switching on a day-to-day basis, between the observability and the security orientation, and therefore switching seamlessly on top of our platform between the different solutions that we are offering. So I said we're going to want to talk a little bit more about observability. It really is a hip new term, and of course we all are super hip here, right? And we all like new stuff. New stuff always brings something new to the table. So what is new here? Well, there's two things. First, we released a new observability solution, as you know. We will talk about it, and in fact, we will see a demo later. But first, let's talk a little bit about theory. So here you can see the definition of the term observability. This term has its origins in the control theory space. Not to geek out too much here, but there's actually a lot of super interesting stuff to dig into in control theory and feedback systems. And, you should all look at it someday, maybe on the weekend or so. But so the basic thought here is that our systems are, of course, complex. They're very complex, and that the best chance we have to understand them is to approximate their internal states in time by looking at their externally observable outputs. And so that's how we come to the term observability. Now, that's obviously a mouthful, so let's try to break this down a little bit. So here are our two, very complex systems. We cannot possibly know what's going on in those heads of theirs, right? All we know is that, they are, of course, very good dogs. But what are they pondering? Turns out these systems also have external outputs. So think of this as telemetry, your logs, your metrics, your traces, your net flow, your borks. This is what we can observe. And of course, on top of the telemetry, we have context. We must have the context, otherwise things get very, very complicated. The context, of course, is also observable and needs to be collected. So here we have a Frenchie and some sort of greyhound. The Frenchie is thinking, obviously, about cheese. No surprise there. The greyhound turns out to be an Italian greyhound, and so of course, all he wants is his spaghetti. And trust me, I specifically didn't use German dogs here because we cannot possibly get into what those are thinking, because this is ultimately a family affair, right? So along with the control theory, there is also the observability creation myth. By now we have all heard this probably many times, probably too many times. The famous three-legged stool, logs, metrics, and traces. All of them are important. And with tracing now released as part of our observability solutions, you have that part covered as well in Sumo. Fundamentally, though, we believe that it is not about the three pillars. We fundamentally believe that while the term observability has its place, observability is just a means to an end. And the end, of course, is reliability. We've already talked about why this is so important at the beginning of this session. It is not called systems observability engineering for a reason. It's called systems reliability engineering for a reason. So finally, here is the big all-encompassing diagram. Observability provides the raw telemetry. What is being observed are entities, and those entities are part of a deployment topology. This is a logical and, maybe if you are unlucky, in some cases even physical model of your system. This provides contextual information so that you can reason over the signals and the telemetry, where they're coming from and what they're trying to tell you. All of this is in the service of reliability, however. You need to be able to monitor your systems using those signals. That's why they're important. Ideally, you automate this to an extent or to the maximum extent possible by using alerting. Of course, we will also often manually inspect and sometimes have to manually monitor our systems, and ultimately human intuition is still important. So having all this data at your fingertips is incredibly important. And then you have to figure out what the heck is going on. Nothing, quite like a scalable analytical planetary scale database that allows you to dig deep into the logs and that allows you to slice and dice and analyze them to get to the root cause. Because after all, logs are not just the most voluminous data source, but also often the one that actually has the root cause, somewhere hidden in it. And we will see this again later in our demo. Okay, and at this point, we're going to make it even more interesting. I've actually been looking forward to this. Joining me now is Abi Khanna, who is a product manager for our observability solution. As you know, we've released a pretty major new observability solution that adds, for the first time, distributed tracing facilities and also introduces our entity-based navigation approach. There is also a completely new unified alerting subsystem under the covers. So hey there, Abi, thanks for joining. Nice studio you have there. But let's talk brass tacks. You have been an engineer and you've been a DevOps and you've even run your own company and you are now part of our product management team. In the end, all this telemetry is fine and all, but it is really only truly useful if we can use it to solve real-world end-to-end problems. You've been thinking a lot about the troubleshooting process, so tell us a little bit more about how we have to look at this.
Hey there, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. I think it fundamentally comes down to thinking about how do we keep the systems we're running reliable. So let's take a look at the traditional troubleshooting process.
Okay, I can see this. Makes sense. We start from finding out and then we do the diagnosis, we restore service, and we ultimately, hopefully we will be able to go back and figure out the root cause. So, Groundhog Day is real and, we go through this on a daily basis. So, but maybe with Sumo, we can help make it a little bit more bearable or maybe I should say hoggable. But notwithstanding, the wheel of doom here, you brought us a little demo as well. So, before we jump into the demo, describe real quick, what we're going to be looking at and, what sort of, system we're going to look at in this demo.
Sure. So we're running 3 applications today in this system. They're going to be running on top of Kubernetes, on top of AWS. We've got an account service, a transaction service, as well as a payment service that all talk to an RDS database. Specifically in our example, we've got a payment service that talks on top of Kubernetes to an account service that then talks to a flaky RDS instance.
This is most excellent, sir. I predict we're going to make bank with this. But now, of course, the whole thing suddenly starts barfing. And this is where our demo begins.
Let's cue the demo. As you can see here, we've got a PagerDuty notification that tells us that the SLO has been breached. We've now been higher error rates than we've expected. Inside of this notification itself, we've got a bunch of context about what's going wrong, what subsystems might be affected, and most importantly, a link that allows us to drive in deeper and enter Sumo Logic to start troubleshooting and examining the problem. As soon as we enter Sumo Logic, we're already surrounding the time frame as well as the context of the incident itself. We can see information about how long the errors have been happening, outliers that help us understand the trends, but most importantly, we're able to actually see the customers that are affected so we can reach out to our support team and actually make sure that the customers that are seeing the worst behaviors are supported immediately. Christian?
Right, and this is really key, right? So, in the end, there's a lot of telemetry that we need to worry about, but it's ultimately all, on behalf of somebody or somebody's service. So, being able to, immediately, go and look after those customers is obviously key.
And now we can actually break down that error rate by pod so we get a slightly deeper view of where this error is coming from. Which workloads running on this Kubernetes cluster are actually seeing these issues? Whether that be hotspotting by CPU or memory, or hotspotting by the error rate itself, we can locate the red pods that we need to pay attention to and drive deeper into. Clicking into one of these red pods, we're able to actually bring out more detailed information about the pod itself, looking at summary information that describes the actual values, or actually shifting over to an entity-based view where we're looking at that deployment, that pod in context of where it sits in that Kubernetes cluster. And we're able to see key KPIs that help us understand the health of that system. So is the deployment healthy? Is the cluster healthy? Is the namespace healthy? This allows us to build context on which piece of the system we need to go focus in on and where we could dive in deeper. And since sometimes we need a kind of deeper entity-rich view, we can also dive into the entity-specific dashboard that enables us to get a full 360 view of what's happening inside of that deployment. Christian?
Right, and this entity orientation is really key, right? And we've talked about this for a long time, about the need to get the context, about the need to derive the context from metadata, and to ultimately, drive via sort of a topological view so that you can see what your entities are doing.
And right here in Explorer, we're able to see the actual context of that deployment inside of the namespace, inside of that cluster, allowing you to browse the context itself. But sometimes we need to dive into the transactions, specifically like in this situation, where you've got connection refused error between two services. And now we need to understand the actual relationships between how those services talk to each other. Driving into traces, we're able to transfer over that metadata, transfer over that time range, keep that troubleshooting context alive. And we're able to add in a few extra filters around errors, just to bring out the right trace that we need to go examine. That filters our trace list below and enables us to start diving one step deeper into what spans might actually be causing or be a part of that story as to why that connection is failing. Clicking into the span itself, we build out the span overview here that allows us to see each individual span broken down, and we can follow the set of errors down to the last span in the list. Pulling over that same list, we're able to see the infrastructure tab describing once again the entity that produced that span. Clicking on raw logs, we're able to drill right into the logs so we can further our deep dive into the troubleshooting elements and try to find out what the actual root cause might be. Christian?
Well, this is perfect. Now we've basically went from, the alert, to the root cause, and we have not really written a single query. Not that I don't like writing queries, but sometimes, especially if it's early in the day or or late at night, it's just so much easier if you are able to navigate via clicking around. And I think, all of us using this as Sumo have already, greatly benefited from this. And, we're super excited to be able to, to have this in the hands of our customers now. Thanks very much, Arby. All right, and that's all, folks. Thanks very much. That's it. That concludes Illuminate 2020. Big virtual hug to everybody, and really happy that you've been able to, to be here today. Hope you got a lot of value out of it. And that's it from us. Thank you very much.